I'm live, but I'm not because it's giving me this testing my connection thing, which happens occasionally, but not frequently. So waiting for it to be published. Okay, it says I'm live now. All right, let me try this. All right, folks, this is Chris. Hang on just a moment. We're going to try something new here. Welcome into the stream, those who are there. And let's see if this works. All right. It did not work. All right. Let me delete that and bring it up again. Try it again. Thank you all for your patience. Just trying something new. Someone offered me something here, so I'm trying to see if this works. And if you guys like it or not, I'll take some feedback, and then we'll get started in just a moment. Okay, where are you at? There it is. Here we go. Let's see if this works. All right, there it was, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you saw that on the screen. Good afternoon in Africa and good morning here on the East Coast of the United States and around the U.S. and North America. Welcome, folks. Oh, Paulie saw it and he said that's cool. Welcome in today to Indaba Africa. Some fascinating, exciting news. Went over 1,000 subscribers yesterday, so I no longer feel guilty in asking guests to come on, because they actually have an audience that's more than just 6 of us. Although the 6 that were here initially, you were much appreciated and loved, and I'm grateful for the loyal subscribers. Interesting experience yesterday. I was on Willem Petzer's channel, and we talked, he interviewed me, and then Willem came on my channel, and we talked about his experiences and his motivations. I thought it was fascinating, interesting. What I also found interesting is kind of my suspicions, what I said with subscriptions with YouTube is that once you get a little bit of traction, if your channel is even remotely interesting in one way or another, whether you're doing stupid pet tricks or talking news or telling jokes, once you get a little traction, it kind of grows on itself. So I did gain a number of subscribers from going on Willem's channel, and then another group came to my channel. But throughout the night, my subscriber base continues to grow as it seems that my videos are now being shared amongst people and friends and family, and also it's being promoted more on YouTube. So we'll see how that goes. But thank you so much for being loyal subscribers, and for those who are new for tuning in, welcome. This is the regularly scheduled Saturday in Indaba Africa. I'm Chris White here in central Pennsylvania. I've got greetings there from the UK, from Hendo. So welcome in. Please enjoy this. Today I have a special guest. I have Herman Roos, who is a tobacco farmer in South Africa. So if you don't know anything about tobacco farming, you're in the right place. We're going to talk about that, the challenges that tobacco farmers faced, and we'll probably get into a little bit of the recent history of tobacco farming in South Africa. Now, I have some understanding and knowledge and experience with tobacco farming in Zimbabwe, but it's somewhat different than what takes place in South Africa. And to be honest, I wasn't even aware that South Africa had much of a tobacco industry. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to welcome in my special guest, Herman Roos. Before I do that, though, you may be noticing once again, sacrilege, a Western Province Stormers fan wearing a Bulls jersey, yet again. But Herman is from the Pretoria area, and so I thought as a nod to my guest, just like yesterday with Willem, I'm wearing a Bulls jersey. So there you go. So with that, no further ado, I'll let him introduce himself, tell you a little bit about his background. I'm going to bring him in here just now. So where's my source? There it is. Herman, there you are on the screen. Welcome to the stream.
Hi, Chris. Thank you. And it's nice to be on your channel and giving me opportunity to talk to the people. Yes, to give viewers a bit of a background who I am. I'm a third-generation tobacco farmer on our farm in South Africa. And yes, it's been part and parcel of our family to farm tobacco. Some say that you are either born tobacco farmer or not. That's as short and sweet as I can get it.
Yeah, no, that's it. So third generation. Well, that's impressive. I did farming, as I mentioned on my channel before, as a dairy farmer as a kid, but that wasn't from a family history of farming. That was just circumstances that took place and where I wound up as a youth. And it was a fantastic experience. Hard work. If you ever do any farming, you have a true appreciation that it's not as simple as Michael Bloomberg claimed. He can teach anyone to be a farmer. You just put a seed in the ground, you pour some water on it, and up grows a plant. It's not quite that simple, and I think you're going to tell us that when it comes to tobacco, it's not so simple. Now I don't smoke, Herman, and I'm not a big tobacco consumer, but just full disclosure, I do invest in tobacco stocks in my retirement account, and I also have a tie to it going back to the 17th century because my ancestors came to the Jamestown colony, Virginia, and were only able to survive in part because they could grow tobacco, and Europeans had a fondness for it. So with that, can you tell us a little bit more about tobacco farming and how it works for you and how it's going?
Chris, as most people don't understand tobacco, we have different varieties of tobacco. in the world. You have your cigar tobacco, which is mainly grown in South America, Cuba, and the islands. And then you have your burley tobaccos, which is being phased out. You have your air cured tobacco, which is grown in South Africa as well. Those are more for your pipe tobaccos, Marlboro, let me say, that bang taste, that strong, high nicotine taste. And then you have your Virginia tobacco. Uh, for that's called basically your cigarette tobacco or flue cured tobacco. Now that is what we are farming on our farm. We do flue cured or Virginia tobacco, and yes, to give you a but broad spectly what the tobacco industry is about. So a lot of people think tobacco is just like tobacco, but there are many varieties, many different types of tobacco, and you specialize once you start farming tobacco in a specific type. You cannot intermix the two. Very few farmers have done that successfully.
So what are some of the biggest challenges you face? You and I were talking previously about the number of tobacco farmers has declined in recent history. I imagine that has a lot to do with a number of things, not just simply threats of expropriation of land, but also I imagine generational changes, youth not staying on farms, credit, nature. Does any of that come into play?
Chris, our main challenge in the tobacco industry is our is nature. The acts of God, as you can say it. You have pests like red spider mite. You have a whitefly coming in that can literally destroy a harvest within a few days. So all of these are working against you in that sense. Then you have floods. I've sent you some pictures of what a hailstorm can do to tobacco. Tobacco, because we reap the leaves. If we get a hailstorm that comes in, it literally destroys within a few minutes. It can destroy a crop 100%. We have occasional flooding, and tobacco is not the type of plant that loves too much water. It likes its water, but not too much. And if it stands in water, like any plant, actually, it dies. And that's your major problem. Yeah, up in this corner of the screen, you guys can see that's about 2 years ago. We had occasional flooding. Oh, this one was one of the severest floods that we had in about 5 years' time. That was our entry of our driveway, and it was about a meter, 2 meter and a half underwater. That car that you're seeing at the bottom of the corner, that car was totally underwater during that time. And the next morning when we got to it, we actually saw that the whole car was underwater. It drove in during the night. It drove into that water. So yes, you have all of these floods coming. It literally washes away your crop. You have hail. I didn't send you pictures of the white fly. What does a white fly infestation looks like, or a red spider mite? Unfortunately, I didn't have those pictures with me on hand. And these are the things that we as tobacco farmers are constantly battling. We have severe heat, severe drought. Um, and these things have an effect on your quality. If it's too hot, if we are running at 42 degrees Celsius during the day, your leaf becomes spongy, and the quality degrades literally over a few days' time. And unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about it. So these are the things we as tobacco farmers constantly battle and try and to get in a crop that is of good quality, that at the end of the day, the smoker will still enjoy.
Well, I got to say, Herman, I feel like a bit of a piker. Honestly, you just got to call the vet out to see your cattle occasionally. You've got to clean them, take care of them, let them wander around graze, give them a little bit of grain, bring them in and milk them twice a day. It seems a lot easier than tobacco farming by comparison. That sounds like quite a challenge you've got there.
Chris, yes, tobacco farming is, I always joke with people. I say, when you want to marry a second wife, start farming tobacco, because you have your tobacco as your second wife, and then every tobacco barn where we cure our tobacco is another wife, and I have 8 of them. So in effect, I always joke. I say I have 10 wives. So yes, tobacco is a very finicky plant. It needs attention. It needs a constant attention from soil preparation. You cannot just take tobacco seedlings and just put it into the soil and expect everything to be right. Um, as I said earlier, I've sent you a soil analysis, and I would, if you can pull that up,
I'll try to do that
to
now.
explain to people what we actually have to contend with in before we start just planting the tobacco. Um, and most people will see that we have to do mathematical equations to get to the right soil uh, compositions, because your composition of your soil in your micro elements, your macro elements, is very, very important. If one of those things are out of balance, you can have a total detrimental effect on your quality of your tobacco in the end of the day. And sometimes the balance is so fine that between your macro and micro elements, that if something goes wrong there, it's literally a fine balance. I would say to a knife's edge, that you need to balance it. Okay, there we have it up here. If people can see the micro elements, we've got your macro elements, your soil pH, soil resistance. Unfortunately, this is in Afrikaans, but you have your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your calcium, magnesium, natrium. Ooh, you have chlorine, you have iron, copper, zinc, manganese, and then carbon, your carbon factor, and all of these things need to be in a balance, and that's and as well on your to get that exact soil balance. And if you don't understand that concept, in the end, you are not reaping a quality harvest. So if we look at the simplicity of this thing, my nitrogen base here was 5 milligrams per kilogram. That estimates about 20 nitrogen in the soil. Phosphorus on the braid 2, that equates to about 100 milligrams per kilogram, or about 100 kilograms of phosphorus that's available in the soil. So now I have to make a decision. Am I going to add phosphorus, or am I not going to add phosphate? Sorry, not phosphorus, phosphate into the soil. And that's where, if you can go down a little bit to the bottom, and that's where the most important part of the soil analysis is your sand, salt, clay, your calcium, magnesium component. Now, your calcium, magnesium component is a very important component. That should be in around 75% calcium to about 25% magnesium. And if we look at we call this the base pool, where it says S-waarde. Now that base pool needs to be in a balance. Now I need to fix the calcium magnesium balance first, and then once I've fixed that, then I decide on the sand, salt, and clay. That's right at the bottom. That's your sand, salt, and clay composition. Am I going to add phosphate? Am I going to add potassium? And that's the major decisions we have to make prior to planting. And once I've got that, made that decision, I can then start my planting season, which is one of the next step of tobacco farming, is what type quality of seedling I have in available. I'm sorry, Chris, I've been hammering on about this.
No, that's quite all right. I just took it off the screen so that people wouldn't think this was just some academic presentation at a university there. I want to get your face back on the screen. So let me do a little bit of housekeeping, Herman. There's a few things here. So someone has a question. Let me get to that in a moment about export, if you're able to export now. But before I get to that, a number of comments are coming in, and people are asking and begging for tobacco. They want their smokes, man. They're desperate. There's no cigarettes because of the lockdown. So I'll keep people asking for that. I think Lynn said, please can I have some smokes?
Well, I think, Chris, we'll talk a bit later about that one. There is a few points I would love to make and tell our people out there a bit later.
Okay.
But I just want them to understand what a typical season of tobacco is. And then we can get to what the impact is on tobacco. Most people don't know or understand that we are busy with one season. Like now, we are sorting our tobacco and selling. Well, not selling anymore, but I'm sorting and selling tobacco in still up until August of this year coming. But already now, I'm still busy with my next year's seedlings. So last week, I sowed my first batch of seedlings. So about June, July, I will start making my seedlings, and then move on in end of about the 25th of September. I'll start transplanting those seedlings into the field. From there on, I will go through the growing season. Good grief, that was in 2015 when the hell totally cleared us out.
So
Good
your
grief.
tobacco plants don't normally look that sad.
No, that was 100% whack. Um, if you can keep it there, that's actually a good picture. Now, at this stage, when you grow your tobacco, you grow it for about 9 weeks, and then what we do is we literally break out the flower. Because you don't want the flower to take all the energy to start creating seeds. You want that energy to grow into your leaves. And this tobacco was a week prior to us doing the suckering. We call it the suckering action, and they were about 1.5 meters high, and that's what a hailstorm did. It literally broke. It took that tobacco from 1 meter, 1 meter and a half, down to what you see there. And so after suckering, you start reaping your tobacco. Um, and we take it out 2-3 leaves per picking, because we go in with fluke tobacco. You harvest um, leaves per stem position. So you have your lower leaves or lugs, then you have your cutters, and then you have your top leaves at the top. So we'll go in up until 8-9 times that we will go into the field, and we'll take out these leaves, two, three, one, sometimes one at a time, picking the best quality and ripeness of the tobacco, and then take them to the barns where we will cure the tobacco in the barns.
All right. Well, let me mention a few things here. So there was a question that came up again. This happens frequently on the stream, and it's usually for people who aren't on here regularly. So I've been asked a question about my background image. That's actually my photograph. I took that, and that is on the highway or motorway from Zeerust to Rustenburg. This is the Mahalisburg on the south side of the highway. And that particular spot is as you go up through what's known as Olifant's Neck or Elephant's Neck. You go up and if you turn left, or excuse me, this goes up, a rise, and then it descends the other side. On the left-hand side, you can go into Rustenburg. On the right-hand side, you go to the Waterfalls Shopping Mall. And if you go to the right-hand side but keep going straight, it takes you right into the Mahalisburg region. It's an amazing area. I took this photograph, snap with my phone when I was last there a couple of years ago, coming back from Gaborone, because I had traversed this so many times. I used to drive that almost every weekend coming down to Pretoria. So just really beautiful sight. So that's Olifant's, on the way to Olifant's Neck in Northwest, for those who are curious about the background. I'm sorry, I lost it here. There's a question I wanted to ask you. Oh yeah, someone also just about my jersey, the Bulls. Am I a Bulls supporter? The short answer is no. I'm not a Bulls supporter. So why am I wearing a Bulls jersey? Well, because Herman is from the area, and so I'm just showing solidarity with someone from the area because I like the area. With Jake White coming to the Bulls, however, I am taking notice of the Bulls, and with Arno Botta coming back from Europe and some of the signings taking place, I think that the Bulls may turn it around. I will always be a Western Province Stormers fan, but I do follow all South African rugby. So that's why the Bulls jersey. A question here, I think you've kind of answered it, whether you do it from seedlings or cuttings. I think you kind of answered that, Herman.
Seedlings. Yeah, it's seedlings.
Yeah.
Yeah, we take seed. It's actually a very, very fine seed, less than a millimeter in size, and you have about, I think, 18,000 seeds per gram. To give you an idea, if I can remember correctly.
Wow.
Yeah, it's about 18,000 seeds per gram. So yeah, to be sow these things in high density, on a high density scale, and then we take the seedling, we transplant that into seedling trays, and that is grown until it's the right size, and then from there we take that seedling and we transplant that into the field at around between 16 and 18,000 plants per hectare. So it is everything that we are doing is mechanically done. It's not done by machine. It is done by hand. It is done by workers, and it's a very, very sensitive cycle because during this cycle, you can get viruses, especially your mosaic virus that can come in and destroy your crop. You have a problem of your fungi or bacteria that can come in and destroy your crop. So during this process, you have to work more clean than what a lockdown is. They are trying on a lockdown. We have to work worse on a clean. So this whole process starts in May, and then, as I said, in September we'll transplant the seedlings. And during this process, if I make a mistake, only at about week 6 to 8 after transplanting into the field will I see the negative effect of producing poor poor quality seedlings.
Well, that's it's quite a challenge. It seems like the whole world is against you. Fungi, bacteria, viruses, politicians, the weather. I would imagine if you're a tobacco farmer, you have to have some faith of some sort. Otherwise, it might be quite a difficult road.
Well, faith is the only thing I wake up sometimes and walk out with. Faith is what's keeping me going. And I think many South Africans as well. My wife has actually just prior to the thing, she put up a nice little thing of Psalm 118 right in front of me, just to focus on during the, time. And it's difficult times, Chris, that we are entering in. With the ban on tobacco, it is not a joke. We already, the tobacco industry in South Africa, were already under severe pressure from the illicit trade. Now, I've seen earlier a question on the illicit trade. Most of the illicit tobacco comes from Zimbabwe, is imported from Zimbabwe. None of the tobacco that you find in illicit cigarettes are produced in South Africa. We have air-cured tobacco. That is all bought by Universal, and we have the flue-cured, which we are in, and that's bought by BAT South Africa. So we have none of our farmers, and we all have a strict contract, to adhere to the rules and regulations of the government, to the trade rules. So we cannot just go and sell to anybody. So all of these tobacco that they need to make these cigarettes are imported from either Zimbabwe, Malawi, Zambia, or Mozambique. You don't know where it comes from. And this ban on the tobacco industry, the detrimental effect that it will have eventually is we are not sure what is going to happen next season. I try to explain it to people using the analogy of two farmers producing tomatoes. And we have our supplies chain store in the middle. And right at the top, we have our 20 buyers. Now, 3 of the buyers are buying from or producing their own tomatoes. Let's say those 3 are the illicit trade. But we have 17 other buyers that's buying from the chain store. And as this ban is now forcing more people to buy from the guy who's producing his own tomatoes, it eventually trickles down to the farmer, and the farmer will sit with either 5 or 10 tomatoes that he cannot sell. The supply chain store is losing money, so eventually the knock-on effect will be the loss of money throughout the system. It will start at the top and eventually slowly trickle down right to the bottom of the farmer. And once that hits us, that's where our food security will now become a problem in South Africa. People don't realize that in South Africa, none of the farmers in South Africa, and especially the tobacco farmers, there's no government relief fund for us. All right. So if we go bankrupt, we go bankrupt. Right. There's 8,000 tobacco farmers. Sorry. Sorry, my wife just brought me some coffee, which I so direly need. Sorry, I'm just going to take a sip here.
That's quite all right. So 8,000. That was actually one of the questions.
Oh, sorry. No,
sorry,
it's not 8,000 farmers.
Okay, so
I made a mistake there. We have 200 commercial farmers, tobacco farmers in South Africa. Flue-cured. 150 upcoming developing farmers, black farmers. Mm-hmm. And in total, we have 8,000 farm workers on the ground. working
Gotcha.
for us.
Okay.
We have about between 30 to 40,000 dependents, right?
Wow.
So remove all of those farmers, the 350. Now we have the flu cured, and we have the air cured guys on the other side. And the air cured is about 100 farmers, if I can remember correctly. So if we take about all of that away, we have 40,000 people who will probably have no income, no food. But the knock-on effect is not
Yeah.
just in the on those, is the fact that we won't get loans, we won't get any support from the banks anymore to continue our food production. And during this time, the insecurity of this whole thing is starting to mess with our psychology, the psychological impact. And I'm afraid, Chris, and we talked about it earlier. You lost a friend due to suicide, and in our way, I would just like to ask all the people on this that's watching now that we can have a moment of silence for Chris's friend, because this is a very important part that I'm going to talk about after the moment of silence. Can we just bow our heads for a moment of silence for the loss of Chris's friend? Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Herman. It's a friend of mine's friend. It wasn't a personal friend of
Yeah,
mine, but nonetheless,
it's
it's
still
It's a South African who committed suicide
it,
because he was despondent over this lockdown, and it really got to him mentally, and it's sad to hear. And thank you for that. It's very considerate of you to bring that up. But people forget the mental well-being and mental health of everyone else when we're focused on our own things and staring at our own navels. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
Chris. Yes, that's the part I want to get to, and people should understand the psychological effect is not yet hitting us at on an agricultural level. But during the drought that was happening in the Northern Cape, and why I want to talk about this is that people understand a lot of our farmers they committed suicide because they didn't have any sheep left anymore. There was the drought just got so bad for them that they decided, you know what, it's better to off myself, and at least I have either good money somewhere or a good life insurance, and my family will still survive. And the problem is that as the money trickling down starts getting less and less and less onto the agricultural sector, and I'm talking agricultural broadly. This is now the flour industry, the chicken industry, vegetables, the tobacco industry, and the wine industry. The pressure that's going to be put onto the farmers is my fear is that a lot of the farmers will not be able to cope with it psychologically. Um, the main reason for that is because we cannot go to church, because we don't have our religious, because farmers in South Africa, we are based on our faith in Jesus Christ. And our most important part is to walk with faith. And suddenly we are cut off from that. One of the most important aspects of our life is to Sunday to go and worship, and also to have that community interaction with your fellow people there, which you don't usually see, and that's where you find you still belong. And suddenly we're not allowed. So you take all of these small factors out of the farming community, and you stand alone. A telephone call can, you know, of all people, you can lie over a telephone call, and people will think, oh, Herman is well. But next morning you hear, oh, he's gone.
He's gone. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. No, I think thanks for bringing that up. That's I think it's something that's not paid enough attention to. We now see belatedly senior medical officials here in the U.S. going, "Oh, yeah, the lockdown is bad for people's mental health." And famously, President Trump came out yesterday publicly and declared that houses of worship are essential services and that it's necessary for the health and well-being of Americans, whether they're Muslims, Christians, Jews, or whatever their faith may be, synagogue, mosque, or church. That was very encouraging for people of faith to hear that yesterday. I'm not a regular church attender, but of course do have my own views on faith and have my own faith. But I do respect those who go to church, and I feel badly for them that in these lockdowns not only are you separated from friends and family and those who are parents going through a divorce and one may have custody of children, now you can't see the child because they're physically separated, or people happen to have found themselves physically separated and can't transit between provinces. I have a friend who lives in Gauteng, and her kids live with her, but we're visiting their father in KZN when the lockdown took place. So she's been without her kids now for some time. So it's very frustrating. But listen, there's a lot of really good questions here, Herman. So let me get to a few of them.
Yeah, let's go.
But before we do that, let me kind of bring this conversation a little less somber. You know, you were talking about your curing barns and how there's like 8 different wives you've got. So I was wondering, is it similar to the King Mswati III, where he does the maidens ceremony each year? Do you select the right leaves by picking the most beautiful and nubile of your tobacco leaves? I'm just curious if you have a similar ceremony.
Basically, yeah, it boils down to that. Yes, it basically boils down to that. It is a trade that's taught over the years and over the time, that you have to pick the best quality. So yeah, that was a good analogy to explain it. Yes.
Well, I thought that might do the trick.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there's a lot of really good questions. Also, there's some first-time viewers on the stream and the channel. Well, thanks for coming in. Apparently, based on my appearance on Willem Petzer's program and then my stream with him on my channel, a few people found out about my channel and have been spreading it in Facebook groups around the world. So thank you so much for that, folks. I appreciate it. This is not a South Africa-specific channel for those who haven't tuned in before, although I do a lot of South Africa commentary and coverage for those who do watch it. But I cover all of Africa, geopolitical issues, strategic issues around the world, business, health, whatever, sport. I'm a huge rugby fan, obviously. So you're most welcome to come in to hear South Africa commentary, and that's what we're doing today, but it's not exclusively that. Next week on my channel, the plan is to have Komi Kulu, who's a Ghanaian-American economist, on my channel. He and I know each other as a consultant, and we will be talking about debt in Africa, which should be interesting to a lot of people. We'll see how that goes. But some of the really good questions here, Herman, that came up. So I think you've addressed, well, you said how many farmers, but how many tobacco farms are there in South Africa? You said 200 farmers plus 150 black farmers who are up and coming. So would it be fair to say there's probably about 300 or 400 farms, or is it less than that?
About 300 to 400.
Okay, so we hit that on the spot. Now, the other question I had mine before I get to some of the other viewers' questions is, tobacco, like coffee, is a substance. Substance can be very finicky, and as you said, the way it's cured, the quality of it, there's a different flavor and taste for these things. Does that affect your export market? Do you have an export market, and is there a place that people particularly like tobacco from South Africa, or is it mostly for domestic consumption?
Most of South Africa's tobacco that's produced is domestic, for domestic use, because we're not that big for exports. How it works in South Africa, back in the 1960s, there was the Tobacco Regulation Act was put in place, especially to stop. The whole idea was back then to create a more suitable level, or a equal playing field for all tobacco farmers. And what happened was that all the farmers set up co-ops, and the co-ops would then go to the buyers, and the buyers would then buy directly from the co-op. So what happens in Zimbabwe is, you take your tobacco to the tobacco floor, and the buyers will walk past and they will buy what they want. Whereas in South Africa, to protect the farmer, we have the co-op cooperation system. So all the tobacco goes to the co-op. They don't know whose tobacco is whose, and they will tell the co-op, okay, we want this grade and this grade and this grade. And all the farmers benefits equally. All right. From there on, BAT South Africa, which is our main buyer at LTP, have been very good to us over the past 10 years, especially the past 10 to 15 years with the illicit trade. Sorry, I've got something on my nose. Sorry.
Give me a moment to put up my Giselle banner while you're doing that.
So they've been very good, and they've been working very closely with our co-op, to protect the tobacco farmers in South Africa. But these regulations that was put in place back in the earlier than the 1960s, and later on, was not just to protect the farmer, but also to protect the buyer, which is all BAT, Philip Morris, all these guys, so that their market can be stable. And what changed the past 10 years is the illicit trade has now come in, and they are slowly eroding away out of the legal market with cheap cigarettes, cheap tobacco that they are bringing in from Zimbabwe. And there's no regulation on who buys on the Zimbabwe. You go to a farmer in Zimbabwe and buy directly from him. Whereas in South Africa, you cannot buy directly from the farmer. I have a contract with LTP. That is to protect me and LTP, and also in the end, our buyer in the end.
No, it's quite a complicated market and very regulated. Again, as I said,
Yeah.
not just climate, not just fungus or fungi, not just viruses or bacteria or politicians. You've got all this bureaucratic infrastructure that's in place and regulatory climate. That's quite a challenge.
Yes.
Now, here is a question that may seem simple to you, Herman, and so my apologies if it is, but I think the person asking had a very good question for those of us who don't know anything about growing tobacco. And welcome to the new folks who've tuned in to our stream here. This is Chris White on Indaba, Africa, with Herman Roos, a tobacco farmer based in South Africa. And I was just about to ask him the question, the all-important question. I mean, if you grow garden crops, you know when maize is done, you know when tomatoes are ready, you can look at them, you know when berries are done. How do you know when to pick the leaf? When's the right time to pick a tobacco leaf? And does it change based on weather conditions, I would imagine, and times of year?
Yes. Chris, tobacco leaf, there's a few things that we look at. For instance, you cannot pick a green leaf. A green leaf still contains too much nitrogen and starches. So once the leaf starts changing color from a green to a yellow color, we pick at a yellow orangey color. Then you will know, okay, this leaf is now right to go to the curing barn. There's other things that you look for. You look for certain spots, and at the edges, you need to see some browning of the edges. That will show you that the leaves are right for the picking. So, yes, weather does have an adverse effect on the tobacco leaves. If as I said earlier, if it's too hot, your cells actually the cells bursts inside the leaf, and any plant where the cells bursts inside the leaf will start repairing itself, and that brings out that the leaf thickens. And in tobacco, you want the thin as possible leaf. That's where your quality lies. A thin, stretchy, aromatic leaf. Once that cell thickening starts happening, you don't have that aroma anymore. You don't have that stretchability, that thin tobacco. So temperatures above 36 degrees is detrimental for tobacco. But just the reverse can happen. If it's too cold, if we get a cold spell during October, November, also that can have a detrimental effect on the quality of your leaves. So yes, working with that, it's a balance. As I said, it's a constant balance between nature and human intervention when you grow tobacco.
Well, I got to say this, Herman, having been a dairy farmer and thinking that was some rough work and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year commitment. I don't think you're doing much to encourage any of us to want to be tobacco farmers in South Africa, showing us the challenges of being a tobacco farmer. But I think it speaks volumes to the fact that, as you mentioned, you're third generation. It seems like this would be the kind of vocation that people are born into and have a motivation, desire to do it because their family did it. Or do you find people with new interests that want to get into the business?
There's a lot of people with new interest in tobacco farming, Chris, that's interested into going into tobacco farming. If this would have happened in the US or any other country that has a stable economy and has the backup system that you guys have in the United States, if you take the University of North Carolina, is a university that's actually dedicated to research in tobacco. We don't have that anymore in South Africa. Prior in the 1980s, we had that. We had the ARC. We had universities doing research into tobacco. The problem is your infrastructure. To get infrastructure up and running is too expensive. So you either have to have an infrastructure, you have to have somebody in your family that can help you Our agronomists have declined due to the decline in tobacco growing. We have lost a lot of agronomists, and the young generation of agronomists are not interested in tobacco. They will rather go into maize or vegetables where there's the idea of there's a lot of money there.
Mhm.
Um, so our agronomists at this stage are very far and few in between, and it takes time for them to come to us, and so we have to physically sit on and do problem solving by ourselves. You have to make decisions, immediate decisions, sometimes faster. Um, but lucky enough today with WhatsApp and these things, we can communicate faster with our agronomist, and these guys are integral part of our production because these agronomists are appointed by our co-op. So they have to make sure that the quality I produce is the quality that will be the best for the co-op, and that is part of a system that we need to get into. They have to make sure that we spray the correct chemicals because we are bound by law to only use and contract to only use certain chemicals. And the guys must also understand this. And to get back to the illicit trade, in South Africa, if they find any trace elements of banned chemicals, agricultural chemicals, in my tobacco, they will not buy my tobacco.
Yeah.
Finish and clear. Gone.
Yeah.
Sorry. You have to find your own market for it. Except uh, if there was somebody doing something stupid next door, but that is very far few in between. That doesn't happen often. I think that only in the 15 years it only happened once to one guy. It happened, but we are very strict on those things. But the cigarettes that you smoke from the illicit trade, we don't know what chemicals they use. Because, for instance, a chemical that's banned all over the world called aldicarb,
Mhm.
I think you will know it as two-step
Yes, yes.
or temic.
Yep.
There's all African countries where you can go. Malawi in 2014, I saw the use of aldicarb.
Yep.
Uh, And if people need to understand, aldicarb is if you get 1 gram of active into your system, you're dead.
That's yeah. It's no. I got you. That's yeah. Absolutely. Well, it's good to know that the market has got that degree of quality control, so that smokers know that they're consuming tobacco that's safe. Well, safe from a standpoint of not having those toxins put in it. But
Yes.
let me do a little bit of
Yeah.
housekeeping here, real quick, Herman.
Okay.
For those who notice in the upper quadrant, left-hand corner of the screen, you'll see a banner from Giselle, the lockdown concert live stream. Those new to my channel, on the 8th of May, Giselle, who is a Namibian singer from Grootfontein, but she grew up there and also grew up in the Northern Cape. Her childhood friend, she does a song dedicates to her, but her childhood friend was Beate Prinsloo, and you're probably like, well, I don't care, who's Beate Prinsloo? Well, Beate Prinsloo is a well-known, world-famous Victoria's Secret runway model, and yeah, so that might be of interest to you. But speaking of which, Victoria's Secret's closing 250 stores here in North America. But anyway, as a consequence of this, but they have, I think, 1,000 stores, so it's not the end for them. But she's a Victoria's Secret runway model, world famous. But the interesting part of that for me is that her husband is Adam Levine, the lead singer of Maroon 5. So I guess that makes me 3 degrees of separation from Adam Levine now, for whatever that's worth. Won't even get me a cup of coffee. But Giselle's a fantastic singer. She sings folk music. She sings country music. That's something I'm not a big fan of, but she sings it in English and in Afrikaans. She has a country album, and also she sings Afrikaans pop, and that's the part that I enjoy the most. Although the folk music's fine too, I enjoy that. But free concert on my channel. You can check it out if you've never seen it before, or if you've seen it, watch it again. She's really amazing. Look under my past live streams, and you will find that playlist. You'll see Giselle, the lockdown concert. She debuted her album live, streaming on my channel May 8th. I'm really grateful for that. Her manager, Johan Eisel, is South Africa's premier illusionist and magician. And the reason I mention this is not just to get traffic to my channel, but also I'm trying to help minority businesses or businesses in general in South Africa, but those who I'm familiar with that I have trust and faith in. uh, succeed and survive during this lockdown. And then it's a free concert. So check it out. She has a new album out, and that's why we had the concert. And then let me put this one up as well, very quickly. Thanks for your indulgence here, Herman. But these are free ads for these folks. I'm trying to help folks out.
That's a problem.
So
No, I can understand that.
let me get you off the screen right here. This is from Shink Art. Shink does caricatures. They're based in Bloemfontein. Shink.co.za. You see that caricature of me there from the Rugby World Cup in 2019 when I was in Japan. They do those, and I'm in good company because they've also done Sia Khaleesi and Joe Black. Now, this is Joe Black with the beard, so most of us will like that. I don't know if we're going to like Joe Black without the beard. He shaved his beard off for the lockdown, but that is Shink Art, shink.co.za, based in Bloemfontein. They do photography, weddings, family portraits, and these amazing characters. You can find them online if you're interested in getting a caricature of yourself or a gift for a family member. Anyway, that's Shink Art, so check it out, ladies and gentlemen. And then I have one new one I have to add today because, let me find it here real quick. There it is. The opening intro that I had was courtesy of Talon, who runs a business called Impulse Graphics. You can find that. I will put the URL in the end of this video when I finish the stream. And Impulse Graphics, that's the person and the talent behind my opening Indaba, Africa little video that people seem to enjoy. So there you go, Impulse Graphics. My gratitude to Talon for providing that was very kind of Talon. And now let me get Herman back on here, and I have a next question for you, Herman.
Shoot it.
Can you guys in the tobacco industry in South Africa, are you able, now I realize, like we can produce all the food we need to eat in America, but we import food from all over the world because people want different varieties, different tastes. We produce all the beef we need, but we import beef from Argentina and now from Namibia because of different things, organic flavors and such. Yeah. Do you produce, as tobacco farmers, sufficient tobacco normally in a normal year to meet all domestic demand, or is it still necessary because there's such a demand for tobacco that foreign imports come into the market?
At this stage, Chris, we are barely producing enough for the South African market. But as I said, is buying all the local crop up for the cigarette market and importing the little shortages they have. But as I said, like with any business, and that's where our problem lies now, probably if this ban on cigarettes is going to continue. Is the major concern for us is that the overflow crop that's going to be left over this year. We are not sure how it's going to impact our next season. And yes, it's at this stage, we actually can grow our market, but due to if the government can get rid of 28% of the illicit trade that's eating into our market, we can actually grow our market in South Africa. But at this stage, every year, as I say, slowly eroding away at the legal market. And we are afraid at this stage that what happened in the past 2 months, if they continue this ban, that this can actually hurt us so badly that if it gets to a point, and with any business, and this should be understandable, that if our main buyer cannot produce economically cigarettes in South Africa, and it's cheaper for them to move out of South Africa and import their cigarettes, what are the job losses for these guys, right? So these are insecurities that is layered upon layered upon layered for us.
No, it's interesting you point that out. Let me make a reference to Zimbabwe and then bring it back to South Africa so it makes sense to those in South Africa and in the region. So when the farming sector came under attack in 2000 with the farm invasions, people said, well, what's the big deal? It's only 15% or 16% of the GDP. But it was about half of export earnings for Zimbabwe. But that's not the real point here. Now, tobacco earnings aren't going to be half of South Africa's export. No, that's not the point. You talked about 200 commercial tobacco farmers, 150 new farmers coming in, so 350 to 400, and about 8,000 workers on the farms, but with family members and dependents, an ecosphere of 40,000 people that are dependent on this. Then you started to allude to, Herman, you were talking about banks. But here's the thing. What about the transport? I'm not asking you this question. I'm making this is a general, rhetorical question. What about the transport? What about the banks that lend money? What about the businesses that you do business with to buy chemicals, to buy equipment, to buy tractors, to buy the inputs? All of those things are all part of this ecosphere that feed into you producing tobacco, and then of course that gets fed into the cigarette industry and the pipe tobacco industry, and that stuff is produced. All of that is affected by the loss of the tobacco industry or the tobacco farming in South Africa. If you guys aren't
Sorry.
producing that, that's quite all right. If you guys aren't producing that, it affects far more than just the 40,000 people. That's the scary part, and that's what a lot of people don't really pay attention to. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, Chris, you're 100% correct there, and I'm asking sorry for the viewers. I've got it itch in my nose. I've probably came into contact with something that's causing a sinus problem. Sorry, guys.
Red spider mites. Red spider mites.
Probably white fly. Um, the concern here is the amount of money that circulates in the tobacco industry on primary level, on farm level. You're talking millions and millions of rands that's given to fertilizing, that's paid to fertilizing company. I'm not talking about workers in this sense. It's your fertilizing company, your chemical companies, your mechanics, your spare parts. We can continue down the line up until the chain store, the Pick and Pay, where we buy our stuff, and that's the major concern for us. Is if you take all of this millions out of the equation, who's going to fill that gap? Or is it possible there is at this stage in South Africa, the government does not give us any relief. There's no ways that you can fill a multi-million rand gap like that. It's not going to happen. Um, I would like to just quote something from Edward Lorenz, where he said, "Sensitive dependence on initial conditions uh, uh, and small changes in the deterministic nonlinear systems can result in large differences in a later stage." And this is what people should understand. We are making small changes in a sensitive, dependent environment in the tobacco industry. And this will eventually result in large impact on the agricultural sector broadly. Um, and I would, if people can understand this, is I understand when people are going gung ho now saying, yeah, we can get rid of cigarettes. Yeah, for once and for all, we can ban alcohol and get everything, all the bad things out of our system. But then you don't respect me as a person. I'm a smoker as well. But on the other hand, most of these people are shouting yay, yay for abortions. Now, as a Christian, it is against my religion to do abortion. Now, I know you don't agree, but but I respect that person's view. I'm not going to walk up to them and say, "Oh, you're a murderer." It's not my entitlement. It's not my right to tell you that, even if we disagree on points. Respect me as a person for making a living out of this. It's still each person's right to make a decision whether he's a smoker, a drinker. If you want to use cocaine, you know what? Go ahead. You know what? You're going to kill yourself. Um, if you want to do whatever, and that is what people, we are an organic system. Human beings, we are an organic system that's like gears working together. If I stop this gear dead, it's going to eventually go down the line and it's going to break you. The mainstream media journalists, and this is where bring out my point now, are running this whole thing on COVID-19. Lockdown rules and regulations must stay in place, and they are not realizing that if the agricultural system in South Africa collapses, there won't be a magic room at the back of Woolies where they're going to pull out a chicken. There's not going to be a magic vegetables appearing magically on the shelf in Pick and Pay or Walmart or wherever. And people should now start thinking that that journalist is going to be without a job if the agricultural sector folds in South Africa. And if there's no food, there's no money
No,
because you need
absolutely.
money to buy. And that's what I'm saying today. These journalists that are running around and constantly complaining about, oh, we must do this and this is bad, and running around supporting the idea of the ANC that the ban on tobacco and alcohol. And I've seen them firing back this week, after and reporting on stories. They should know that they will be the first ones in the line that's going to be without a job.
No, I think you're
And
spot
we
on
have,
there, Herman. I find it honestly when people refer. I don't know. Let me give this example. I think a lot of people have seen this now. The SABC journalist who interviewed the Afrikaans speaking gentleman in the squatter camp near Pretoria. I think folks have seen that video now. That's not a journalist. That's just some hack who's out there. That's not real journalism. I used to write for the Associated Press when I was younger. I've been on television before and on radio, and it irritates me to no end. If you're giving opinion, which is what this channel is doing, we're offering opinion, so I'm not claiming this as news, but we often, on my streams, I talk about the news and then I offer opinion and analysis of it. It's not news, but like for instance, when I was at the Rugby World Cup, I wrote news articles about the Rugby World Cup. That was news. I was reporting on news and events. wasn't necessarily offering opinion, but it's very frustrating to see that sort of thing. But the problem is that it's so pervasive in the media around the world, and it's run by people who are perfectly fine with that because it all kind of goes back to O.J. Simpson and the white Bronco chase. That is kind of when this all this nonsense really got started in earnest. I'm not talking about fake news, but I'm talking about this death of journalism in which it's easier to be an attractive looking or well dressed talking head who simply spews things. Kind of frustrating. There's a few things in the chat here, real quick. We're running up the top of the hour. Herman, would you like to stay a little bit longer, or do you need to go? Because we can go a little bit longer if you'd
no,
like. Okay.
we can stay a bit longer
Okay,
if you
we'll
want
stay a
to.
bit longer
No
unless if
problem.
the crowd starts disappearing. We'll take that as a sign. But in the meantime,
Yeah.
Kyle, I've set Kyle up as an administrator. So if you say something nasty, he'll boot you. Just so people know that. I've tried that. He had asked to do that before, so I'm putting a lot of trust in the hands of Kyle that he'll manage the chat well while I'm here. But just a few other sad notes here. HBM Air mentioned when I was talking about being separated from family and children that his sister hasn't seen her children in 2 months because of this lockdown. That's sad. That's heartbreaking. Parents should not be separated from the children by this nonsense. And Jacques mentioned that he too had lost a friend. So my sympathies for Jacques and his family and his friend's family. That's unfortunate as a consequence of this lockdown and the despair that comes out of it. It's really sad. Sorry to bring folks down on that, but I just thought we should mention that very quickly. So Herman, what do you think the future is? Do you think there's any possibility that you'll be able to get some of these challenges lifted off of you? Obviously, nature you are not going to be able to change, and you can't change the parasites, at least the ones from nature. Maybe the ones in government you can change, but do you think is there a lobby or an advocacy group for the tobacco farmers that has any influence
Yeah.
whatsoever?
We have a group called SATA, South African Tobacco Transformation Association. That's spearheaded by our head, Francois van der Merwe. And they are the guy, he's working directly with government and trying to get our message across. And he's been working quite hard since this whole story of Dlamini Zuma breaking this week that they want to continue the ban of cigarettes up in level 3. I would love to say something else on a different point, if I may, Chris.
Yeah, please.
There's a saying when a man is hungry, he can stay content. But when his children becomes hungry, he becomes a different animal. And what people should start realizing is, as we are going into this lockdown and businesses losing or workers not receiving their salaries, and we are now, as I said, we're facing the banks, as you said, everything that has the knock-on effect, the organic system that's being broken, as I mentioned earlier, from what they call the butterfly effect, actually. Um, when people are hungry, they've got nothing to lose anymore. And once you start entering into that state of mind, your nation becomes a dangerous place to be in. Um, I always tell people when I have a tank of petrol or fuel in my car and I see my family is hungry, I will be willing to take the risk to go and steal food
Yeah.
as long as I can feed my family. If I'm alone as a person, I will forage and scavenge because that's how we are, that's our nature. And the people in South Africa should start realizing that South Africa is not a country where our government, like in the United States, you guys have probably one of the best support systems in what I've seen in agriculture. Um, we don't have that. The government is not just going to pour in money into the agricultural sector and start boosting us to get back into production. And at this stage, we are looking at end of July, uh, at around 20% food possibility. Now, these are just statistics that I've got from most what economists are saying here and there. There's no definite, but the fear is that we will already have about 20% chance of having a food or danger that we might lose 20% of our food security. The big problem will come in late December, January. That is when this thing will impact us the hardest. That's when the money would have dried up, investors would have probably pulled out, and that is when South Africa will start seeing the first signs of famine. We thought it might be earlier, but at this stage, we still have enough food going around so that we can feed those who don't have food. And one thing all over the world that people don't know is that where in countries where there was severe famine, where there were severe problems with money, it was actually tobacco that lifted those countries out of poverty. You take Brazil. Um, for those who can Google Brazil, you will see. I think they have like 500,000 tobacco farmers. 500,000 tobacco farmers odds, if I can remember it correctly,
That's astounding.
from when yeah from and throughout Africa, the families that survives famines, the families that survive economical hardship, are the families that produce tobacco. um, there was an African country, I can't remember for the love of me which one it was. They had a problem with farming cocaine, and the government started introducing tobacco into these communities, and say they totally stopped and they totally stopped the production of cocaine in those areas. This is a legal substance. They can farm it, and suddenly the world is shouting, "You monsters! You monsters! You monsters! You tobacco farmers! You are killers! You are killers!" But now, o batla bolela ka wena phile, and o batla motse wena straight. Di madi ya moto mo South Africa. Di moto o swile. Ha sana tshwara dijo mo di mala. And moto o stata o swile. Wena o tla tshwara di madi ko matsogo ya wena. Os wena ga sana itse. Di moto mo South Africa was strafa. Guys, you don't have an idea of the blood that you will have on your hands when people are going hungry in South Africa.
No, I think you made a fantastic point there. It's a point I always make. I'm not commenting on the merits or the bad side of wealth disparity, but of course, South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, China, and then a little further down the list or up the list, USA are among the greatest wealth disparity on the planet. And people like to focus on wealth disparity as if it's some kind of moral wrong. But the fact that Bill
Yeah.
Gates is a multi-billionaire is not because it's morally wrong. It's because the guy had an idea, he ran with it, and made it work. But the distinction I make here is that having lived in poverty, now poverty in rural Appalachia is not poverty in Liberia or the Congo. It's very different.
Yeah.
But we didn't have plumbing for part of my childhood. I used an outdoor privy or outhouse. I fetched water from a cistern for cooking and for showers. Yeah, so that is poverty, folks. And I didn't have money to go to university. I went on aid and assistance and scholarship for my efforts. My point is that poor people don't steal. That's a myth. Thieves
No.
steal, but starving people will steal when they have to eat. And I think
Yes.
that's the distinction you're making here. And the ANC
Yeah.
and the lockdown are pushing South Africans to starvation, and you
Yeah.
will turn millions of honest, law-abiding South Africans of all races and creeds into thieves. out of desperation. And if that happens, it's just going to be game over. It's really sad to hear about. But I did a video, a few comments are coming in the chat now. I did a video recently which I called "The Damage is Done," or COVID-19, the damage is done, now comes the carnage. For exactly what you're talking about, Herman. You're talking about the disruptions in the supply chain, in this case tobacco and food, and the knock-on effects. It's going to happen across every sector of economic activity. And even if the lockdown were lifted in total around the globe today, we will be dealing with the economic consequences in supply chain, whether it's for turnips, tobacco, Toyotas, laptops, microphones. We will be dealing with that now for weeks, months, and in some sectors for years. The disruption is going to be that bad. So really disturbing that there. Now, very quickly, two more things. We actually just reached our highest number of viewers during the stream. Thank you all for tuning in. Really glad you're here. Welcome to the Indaba Africa chat. This is Herman Roos, who's a tobacco farmer in South Africa, and I'm your host, Chris Wyatt. So two more things real quick. I made Kyle a moderator, and they're picking on him. There's a little bullying going on. It's a good-natured bullying. I think people are calling him, does he think he's a prefect now? It's funny because for the American audience, prefect is it's a Commonwealth concept. It's not something most of us are familiar with. In fact, I only know what a prefect is because of Harry Potter. If it wasn't for Harry Potter, I wouldn't even understand the concept. But and then one last comment here. Ursula Kuhn, she said that she makes a very good point here. And she says the media is covering a lot of things, but what she makes the point that, and if I inferred incorrectly, please let me know, Ursula, I think I got it right. Your point is that the media is covering the lockdown, but they're not talking about businesses and individuals and the human aspect and what's happening to people. And that, in my view, my personal view, is the most shameful aspect of the media's conduct during the midst of this lockdown globally around the world. Instead of worrying about what Orange Man Bad had to say, or praising South Africa's lockdown as being courageous, which it's not, it's insane, the media should be looking at those who are going without food. Now, that happens a little bit, but I've only seen a few photographs of the 4-kilometer-long queues in Northwest, people lining up for food parcels, and no one talking to those people and hearing their individual stories about how they've lost their income or they didn't have a job to begin with and how desperate people are. Do you see any of this around you? Obviously, your tobacco workers are working, but is it impacting the community around you?
Chris, at this stage, we don't see it in the agricultural sector as of yet. As I said,
but
the trickle-down effect, it's coming. But we are now seeing it with friends of ours, friends of my son, that one of the parents that said to my wife, that she doesn't have any income because she works in the hospitality industry. And the lodge where she works is closed down. So last month she got half a salary, and this month she probably not going to get any salary. And the first thing she thinks of is buying food for her family. So there's not going to be paying any school fees. There's not going to be paying mortgages. There's not going to be paying all the other things. And as these things, we are getting more and more and hearing more and more of these things happening around us, especially people in the tertiary sector. Now the major problem and concern we are sitting with in South Africa as well is with this, what is this knock-on effect going to have on teachers that is employed by the schools themselves and not paid by government? Will they still be able to get a salary? And as I said, we'll get back down eventually, right here to the bottom where we sit. Worldwide, as you said, and that's true, Chris, the US, China, Europe have the financial capabilities to restart their economies at a much faster pace than your South American or African economies. And we are the bad kids on the block in Africa. We are the how can I put it? The kid with the runny nose and the torn clothes. That is us. That is Africa. That is who we are. That's South Africa. And unfortunately, when it comes to the dishing out of the food, we'll be last in line. And it will take us at least 2 to 3 years to get through this whole depression, to get out. And if people can start realizing that, the faster we can end this lockdown, they're not going to stop the spread of COVID-19. Not with a lockdown. I've learned that in agriculture. I'm a farmer, and I will say this again and again.
Once a virus is in your crop, you cannot stop it.
Yeah.
Um, I've seen that in my own crops. And don't come and tell me hand sanitizing and everything is going to stop it. They should have stopped COVID-19 at the border when this thing happened. Uh, for most people, that's going to go crazy for what I've said now. While I'll explain to you, we have a thing called mosaic virus. Now, the only way from stopping that thing from infecting my crop is to stop it at the gate, not to get into my seedlings or to not get into my field. But once I start seeing symptoms of this virus in my field, you can go and pick any plant in that field and test it. You will find mosaic virus.
Yep.
Some plants don't show the symptoms as fast. But then again, sometimes you need a virus to suppress a fungi or a bacteria. Now we're running wild and we're creating this total dystopia, and we're giving people authority that shouldn't have authority over my life, my choice. It's my choice to smoke. It is every smoker's right to make their own decision, just as much as the person who wants to have an abortion, which I do not agree with. But it's their right. It's their constitutional right. The person who wants to kill somebody who committed murder, you know, everybody has a right to life. It's my right to smoke. And once we get past that point, that the minister does not have the right to make that decision for me, no matter who or what, we're still a democracy. And that's where mainstream media should start waking up and realizing that they are pushing a narrative for a thing that will never be stopped. The virus cannot be stopped. And I don't care what you say to me. I'm a farmer, and there's this one thing. We work on the ground. We work with nature every day of our lives.
Well, I'm with you, Herman. It's having spent the last 3 decades studying, following, and engaging in epidemiology field, not as a medical professional, but as an analyst and intelligence officer and that sort of thing, and also ran actual programs for vaccine research and programs to fight HIV and tuberculosis and Ebola and such. I'm right there with you. I think it is hubris beyond comprehension to think that the lockdown will stop the virus. And we've been told things by governments that are simply wrong. And it's understandable to get things wrong at the outset of this because it was new. They didn't know how to deal with it. But now there's so much data. We know so much about this that continuing this is just absolutely outrageous. Once a virus gets into a human population, it is there. I think that some of this goes back to when we eradicated smallpox in the wild. Back in 1979, the World Health Organization, the world famous Chinese extension service there, known as the World Health Organization, in 1979, they announced that they had eradicated smallpox in the wild through a tremendous global effort to get rid of smallpox, a horrible disease. Thank goodness they did eradicate it. But a bit of hubris, it still sits in labs in Russia and Atlanta, and the Army's use SAMRID in level 4 biohazard labs. The samples are there. But beyond that, they've found bodies in the permafrost in the northern hemisphere in Alaska and Russia that with permafrost melting, they had to move graves, and they cultured tissue samples, and they found smallpox that could be revived. So we didn't really eliminate it in the wild. We just eliminated it in our presence. Once these things are there,
Yes.
and all these people sitting around waiting for a vaccine. Well, where's the vaccine for HIV, for SARS, for MERS, for Lassa fever, hantavirus?
No,
The list goes on and
there
on.
is nothing.
There is nothing. We might get something, but if you're waiting on that, that's crazy. So I think these measures are out of control. But back to your point about a right and a choice. I find it hilarious in some respects that here in the U.S., I don't know how sure it is in South Africa, but here in the U.S., the strongest advocates for the legalization of marijuana, the weed advocates that want weed, they think it's their right to smoke weed. I'm not a fan of marijuana, and so I have a view on that. That's not what I'm bringing in here. But my point is that the staunchest advocates for the individual freedom and libertarianism to smoke marijuana, regardless of the outcome or the consequences, many of those same people are the people I hear saying the government has a right to lock you in your homes. You must do what they say. You shouldn't be allowed to open your business. You just have to deal with it because only the government knows. It's ironic to see the dichotomy of people who call for libertarianism when they want to smoke weed, but they're happy to see the government take our liberties away without any legitimate justification based on the medical situation. There's a quote here that Ronaldo Reader gave, not Ronaldo Hose, but Ronaldo Reader. Ronaldo said, now this is interesting. He quoted Nelson Mandela: "When a man is denied the right to live the life he believes in, he has no choice but to become an outlaw." Ouch.
That's 100% correct.
Yeah.
And that was based on most of the struggle was, if you take away my rights, I will fight you. And it's so strange for me. I've just got a comment here from Lucy Pixie that says it's not entirely my right to smoke. Now, to give the guys an idea, 1.2 billion rand in taxation alone was lost to the government from the legal trade in South Africa in April alone. Another 1.2 billion will be lost in May. Now, if you take all the money from the taxes that's paid over by the cigarettes, they can pay for 6 million smokers cancer treatments throughout the year for the next 10 years. If you put it into context, 1.2 billion rand would have kept SAA in the air for the whole of April without on the domestic routes between Cape Town, Durban, and PE, would have kept them in the air without asking 1 cent from one passenger, full flights. So take that amount of money that's put into our coffers. Now we've lost it, and these are not recoverable money always. We don't know what the impact of the illicit trade is. We don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. Will government see the light and realize we are? How can I put it? I don't want to swear here. Sorry, I'm biting on my tongue from anger. Sorry, guys. I need to just compose myself. Government does not realize the impact that this will have on our civil society throughout, the psychological effect for a person, sending a person, making him a criminal just to want to buy a pack of smokes. You know, literally going around the corner into an area where he will, as a person, for the life of him, never would have gone there, never have thought up such dark plans to get a cigarette, to get a bit of alcohol, you know. And we are now making criminals from good people. And once you start going down that line of thought, how easy is it for you to start implementing that line of thought in your business? Because remember, you are now in a situation where your business is struggling. You have already been forced to do criminal activity by buying smokes illegally. Now your Minister of Police is saying, oh, if I catch you without a slip to prove that you've bought the cigarettes, I'm going to send you to jail. So immediately you'll get dissent, not dissent, what do you call the word? People getting angry with government. And finally, this will spread into their businesses. And they will start making plans on how not to pay taxes, how to bamboozle government out of money. And what are we creating? We are now creating a state of criminals. And that is exactly what happened in Mexico, in Colombia. And that was why it was so easy for these drug lords to buy policemen. If you guys go and read the book of Roberto Escobar, I've mentioned it on a previous time, how corruption in businesses, due to the lack of government stimulating their industry and protecting their industry, has caused the growth of the cocaine industry to such an extent that these guys literally bought DEA agents to bring in tons of cocaine, and you will know that much better than I do. Yeah. And this is now the problem we are facing, and this is where South Africans should now start to come together and start. Doesn't matter of your color, who you are, culture, whatever. Starting to get together and say, listen, you guys, if we are destroying the tobacco industry, if we are destroying the wine industry, what are the next thing they're going to destroy? is the ban on clothes. How silly is that? And that's the thought. And as these ridiculous steps are being put into place, people are going to become more and more criminal.
Yeah, no, listen, Herman, the clothing, this is, so many of these actions, and this is what I've talked about. A number of people were less than kind when I was on Willem Petzer's stream, and I was talking about, now, many more were kind, but some were unkind when I was suggesting that in the 2021 municipal elections that the ANC could lose if the opposition did certain things. The things that are happening are absolutely insane. The Minister of No Trade, Ibrahim Patel, directing that e-commerce is not permitted, as if he's the king potentate of South Africa, saying you can't conduct e-commerce because it's unfair to traditional bricks and mortars businesses who have been restricted from trading because the government artificially prevented them. Well, how insane is that? I mean, I think that Gareth Cliff said the same thing. I said this, but he said as well, so I'll make sure I attribute it to him as well. But, is it unfair for automobiles to come up with the internal combustion engine to put the wagon and the horseback transport and buggy whips out of business? No, it wasn't. That's just technology. Things change. It has been 26 years since 1994, since the first graphical browser for the internet came out from Mosaic. Not the tobacco virus, but the software. So It's been that long. If a business, its bricks and mortars, hasn't developed an online presence for commerce, even in places in Africa by today, then that's on them. No one's held them back. No one's prevented them from trading in that fashion. And many of the omni retailers like Trueworths do that. So anyway, just utter nonsense with this stuff. It's just crazy. It's crazy. There was a comment in here from Hendo saying that South Africa is the only country in the world with alcohol and cigarette ban. Sorry, Hendo, but that's not true. I can't buy alcohol in Pennsylvania. I'm prohibited from buying alcohol in the state. And why is that possible? Because in this state, we have antiquated laws in which the only place that can sell alcohol, I'm talking about liquor and wine, the only place that can sell that is a state-owned store known as the state store. So in all our jurisdictions, we have state-owned enterprises here too, unfortunately, on occasion. This is at the state level, so it would be the equivalent of the provincial level. It'd be like Gauteng owning the liquor stores. So I can't go to a package store and buy South African wine or buy Chavez or gin or anything like that right now. That lockdown was determined by our governor and with his authority as the governor of Pennsylvania. So it's not just in South Africa, but that said, it's nowhere near what's going on in South Africa. We're not trying to compare. Our misery doesn't even reach anywhere near the misery of South Africa. But the point is that the overreach,
it's ridiculous.
The overreach of state authorities in these issues and taking the liberties and choices away from people is not just in South Africa. It is in other places, but it is the worst in South Africa. And I think that the South African, the ANC government is showing its backside. And for those paying attention and those that go out and work hard to get voters in all the opposition parties, they could send a very clear message to the government and perhaps take them out of the majority next year and force them into a coalition. Or if they're very successful, maybe even another party could rise up to the 51%. We'll see. Certainly in certain cities, I think that's going to happen. Can you get alcohol? Sorry, someone says, can I get it in other states? You can in many other states, Hendo. I could drive outside the state and get it in some cases, but why drive 2 hours to buy a bottle of booze? I don't really drink that much. It's not that appealing to me.
Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Chris, I just want to comment on William van der Walt.
Doesn't that throw you off? His name is William van der Walt. It should be Willem.
Yeah.
We're always giving him trouble for that.
Batla bolela ko wena straight to wena gasana batla bolela ka racial difference in South Africa maar wena gasana ietsie bolela even one miskien one African language before ons tata ka se nonsens u batla bolela ka racial differences at least untuta one language ya Africa. Learn one African language. If you want to talk nonsense to me about racial discrimination and racial this and racial this, please go and learn one African language, and at least if you can speak it at least a little bit. And that's I'm very, very strict on this. En nog batla bulela soma once minister Dlamini Zuma. Wana hasana itsi di mulatu wana utla cosa kopile kuka di moto mo parasing. Ko parasing di moto u depende ko ka boere yarna. Wa verstaan. En die madi ja, maar utla tsenza koma tsogo ya wena minister Dlamini Zuma. En die moto utla sasana tswara dijo mo di mala. Minister, utla pile. Die Maria di moto. Utla tsitso ko matsoge ya wena. Wa verstaan. En 'n kopile. Die moto utla kwatile wena. En wena utla krila di strafe ja di story. Wa verstaan. So I just sent a message in Tswana to explain to the guys. I said to the minister in Tswana that the blood of the people will be on her hands. And I'm straight about this, and I'm not scared to say it. People should understand that in Africa, you cannot respect people, and it is very important to understand our cultural interaction. I grew up with today is my right hand man on my farm, Big Boy Molobati. He can speak Afrikaans as good as I can speak English, and I was always stubborn to learn Isitswana, and I only had to learn it at a later stage in my life, and I'm still struggling to speak it properly.
But Herman,
if we,
I've got to say, hey, ke alaboa. I got to say, man, when you speak Tswana, I understand your accent. I actually got most of what you said, whereas when I'm in Botswana or in Northwest and they speak it, of course, it's their
yeah,
language and they speak it fine, but I
yeah.
have a hard time keeping up because the cadence is faster. So your cadence is right on. I can keep up with you. So ke alaboa.
Okay. Um, Chris, I would like to say to you, thank you. I see my son is waiting outside for me. Um, so I would like to thank you for giving me opportunity to be on your live stream and also to get our point across. And for everybody that's listening out there, please spread the message. Please get the message out that things are dire in South Africa, not just in the tobacco industry, but also in the wine industry. I spoke to Kwach about you, one of my friends this morning, and what he said to me, there's 140 odd wine farms and stores, wine shops will probably not open after the end of June if this thing continues. So the reality out there is dire. But also, if we can stand together as South Africans and the world can unite behind us, from the United States, sending out our message out there. Thanks, Chris. From the UK, sharing our message and to put pressure on our government to realize what is going on and let us get these industries open and let us get to the people. Then we will survive.
Well, Herman, hang in there for just a second. We're not going to take off. I'll let you go here in just a moment. But since you're switching languages, also dann werde ich auch ein bisschen auf Deutsch reden. Es gibt manche, die sind da, die Deutsch verstehen können. Und da ist aber echt etwas sehr interessant für mich, heute also reden mit Ihnen. Vielleicht nächstes Mal, wir können Sie wieder auf diesem Programm haben in der Zukunft. Wird man sehen. Anyway, yeah, for those who follow German, just thanking Herman for being there. Those who speak Afrikaans probably picked up some of that just because the similarities between the two. But there was a question before we go, and someone said, well, what can we do other than just complain? Honestly, folks, I've built my own channel for my own purposes for a consultancy that I have. But what's going on now is that because of the lockdown, a lot of people around the world have so much time on their hands looking for something to do, something to listen to, and a lot more people are quickly following things taking place on YouTube and other alternative media because they're not getting what they need to hear in the popular mainstream media. So what you can do is you can link up, network with people. Now you guys know a lot more about the tobacco industry in South Africa, the challenges are being faced about it. It's not just some nameless, faceless industry out there. You've got a face you can put to it and an understanding for it, and you can share it with others in South Africa. We have people on here from New Zealand, from Botswana, from Namibia, from Canada, from the US, Australia, who are watching this stream. And we can share this with people we know. We can reach out to others. And there are things we can do to do business with South African businesses, to spread the word, and also keep pressuring our politicians. So it doesn't sound like, pie in the sky and is it naive? No, it's not. These things actually can have an impact. And it's not simply whinging. Herman didn't simply complain about his challenges. I listened to him talk here for the last almost 90 minutes now, and he's talked about things that can be done and ways to go about doing it. So I'm of the same opinion. We can offer solutions to do things. So anyway, Herman, I'd really like to thank you for coming on. Would you like to say one last final word, and then I'm going to close out the stream?
Yeah, I just want to actually brag. The nice picture that you have behind you, I quite know that area quite well. It's about 60 kilometers or 45 minutes drive from my home. And it is lovely to actually see that you are posting something very beautiful and to say that we can be as South Africans proud of our country, no matter where I've been in the world, over the 22 countries I've visited. I always tell people there's no country in the world where 7 hours from Johannesburg to the west, we are in the desert. 7 hours east, we are in the tropics of the world. And 14 hours south, we have the French winelands and we have the Swiss Alps. So, guys, let us be proud no matter how difficult it will go in South Africa. And we are into a very difficult time. But let's keep our heads up. Let's stand together and say, no matter if I differ from you, Herman, I don't like tobacco, but you don't like this and I don't like that. Let's stand together. And you know what? If we stand together in South Africa, we will get through this. But if we start fighting with each other, that's the time when we will fall apart and we will end up like Zimbabwe.
Well,
Don't let
I'm
the
sorry.
media don't let the media abuse their power. Read carefully, sit down, thank and take some time for what you've read from the media, and then make your decision. We as South Africans are strong. Our forefathers have been through wars on both the Zulu, the Tswana, the Sutus, the Xhosas, the Boer, the English, and you know what? We are all still here today, no matter how hard somebody tried to wipe us out. Chaka Zulu tried to wipe out the Tswanas. You know what? They've got their own country called Botswana today, thanks to Chaka Zulu. And the English tried to wipe out the Afrikaner, the Boer. And you know what? We are still here today. And I'm proud to say that I'm South African.
Well, Herman, I'm going to slide you off the screen here very quickly, but you're still on your mic there, so hang on. Don't go away because I want to close out with you. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. This has been fantastic. I echo the words of Herman Roos. If you're a South African, even if you've left the country and you live in Perth or you're in the UK for business or because you've left because of the challenges, you should be proud to be a South African. There's much to be proud of. It's an amazing country with amazing people from all walks of life. It has a tremendous political problem that's being exacerbated by a government that's drunk on power at the moment and exceeding the Constitution. At least that's what opposition parties believe who've taken them to court over the National Coronavirus Command Council. We will see what happens to that. But work with each other, help each other, be proud of your country. South Africa is truly an amazing place. I thank you for tuning into the stream today. It's been a fantastic experience. I'm really grateful for my guest, Herman Roos, who stuck with me for 90 minutes. A very interesting stream. I think that I will go ahead and do a stream later this afternoon for those of you who follow Ronaldo Hose. I will do a stream after he goes off and see if there's any interest, and we'll wrap up and come back with this. Herman, you'll probably be out trying to save those tobacco plants from hail or rain or heat or mosaic virus or red ants or whatever it is, or red spider mites. I said red ants. Sorry about that. You'll be out working, but if you're around and if you'd like to call back in, if I go back on later this afternoon, early evening for you, you're welcome to call back in case people have some more questions. But no pressure. That's just a choice. Anyway, so I'm going to close the stream here, folks. Thank you for tuning in to Adopt Africa. This is Chris here in central Pennsylvania. Wherever you find yourself in the world today, we're going to get through this COVID-19 hysteria and this nonsense. The virus won't go away. It will be in human populations, and we'll deal with it like we've dealt with every other virus in the past. The human race will survive, and we'll get through this. I hope you all have a pleasant weekend. I hope that you're able to reach out to friends and family so they're not in despair or socially isolated, or if you're separated from children and loved ones, do your best. Use social media. Take advantage of the global telecommunications network to do your best to stay in touch with folks. And with that, I'm going to say thank you very much. If you're not a subscriber, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you didn't like the content, feel free to leave a comment. Let us know. We'll take it in a different direction if it's appropriate. You can give a positive, negative comment. I read all comments. I will offer a response if it's appropriate. If you're abusive, I might respond to trolls just to show them up, just to put some facts out there. Also, I ask that you smash that like button if you enjoyed this at all, because likes drive viewership, and that story is true. My channel has doubled in size in less than a week because people are becoming aware of it, in no small measure because a lot of people who've come over recently have been liking the videos, whether they agree with it or not. Like doesn't mean you agree. It just means you like the presentation and what was offered there. You may not have liked it personally or agreed with it. But anyway, please smash the like button, and that'll be very helpful. Really grateful for it. Once again, I will do another live stream this afternoon after Ronaldo host goes off. So that would be about probably 15:30 here on the East Coast of the U.S., which would make it 21:30 in South Africa. For those on a Saturday night in the midst of lockdown with nothing to do or looking for something to do, you can tune in and join me, and I'll answer questions, and we'll talk about the news of the day. Anyway, once again, I want to thank my guest, Herman Roos. Fantastic guest, really enjoyed it. Remind you that the next scheduled live stream, of course, I do the straight voltage ones, but the next scheduled live stream will be next Saturday, and the plan is to have Komi Klu, a Ghanaian-American economist who's currently trapped in Ghana because he was there on business and could not get back to Philadelphia. So he's been in Ghana since the lockdown started, and as long as his network works, we should be talking about debt in Africa, which should be interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, I will catch you later on. Have a pleasant day. This is Chris saying so long from